again. This is Jeffrey Cranford back with my friend Tracy Hansen. And it's going to be like 85 degrees today. And we're actually going to play golf today.
I know. I'm excited. I just came from like 15 degrees.
15 degrees. So you've gone up. You've 70 degree shift.
Yes.
All right. Well, welcome to the desert. Welcome to the desert. So we're back again, as I alluded to. We're here in La Quinta, California. And we are talking a little bit about, well, what does Proverbs have to offer us? This part of the wisdom literature. And I want to read to you real quickly before we start here, Colossians 2. Now listen to this. Where does our wisdom and knowledge come from? Well, first of all, as followers of Jesus, which both Tracy and I are, catch this. The true knowledge of God's mystery, that is, Christ himself, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. So first of all, when we're reading the Proverbs, we're actually reading into the very person of Jesus, which is pretty cool to recognize and think. We think we got to go to all these different departments. In a spiritual sense, we can just come to Jesus, and all wisdom, all knowledge, all truth, the mysteries of everything are really hidden in Christ, which is pretty cool.
That's really cool.
Which is really cool.
I like that because I kind of think like you have to go to the Gospels just to figure out who Jesus is. But what you're saying is like, no, he's in the Proverbs. He's everywhere.
He's everywhere. He's in Genesis 1. He's in Revelation 22. And that, which is, when you start putting this all together, it's extraordinary, this picture of Jesus that emerges, the creator, Paul says in Colossians, of all things. So if he's both the creator, and all things were created by him and through him, and nothing that's been created has been created except that it went through Jesus, you can go, well, we have an ultimate source of wisdom, right? We don't have, well, I picked this and this, a little bit like golf. Now, I want to talk next about this idea. Have you struggled with putting? I used to hear this all the time. So I traveled a little with Dave Stockton Jr. and his father. He and his father were both, and they still are, short game gurus. And I love going out to dinner with him because he was always so positive about his putting and this and that. But he didn't like going out with me so much because I was always so negative. And so, but we're still good friends to this day. But did you were you aware of, I need to be cautious about who I'm hanging out with, because you can kind of get stuck in the mini tours and bad ideas and bad, right? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. And the people that I hung out with on tour were fellow believers. And
which is good, yes.
Yes, and so we're like-minded. And then there was this phenomenal player. Her name was Vicky Getz.
Vicky Getz,
the short game guru. And so she was a good friend of mine, and I was always trying to learn from her to be better putter, because that was always kind of my nemesis. I was really streaky. So yeah, I was always trying to absorb.
Trying to glean things from her, and hey, let me buy you dinner, Vicky, and maybe we can go out. Well, you know, the Proverbs say the exact same thing. Now listen to this, Proverbs chapter 13, verse 20. It says, "He who walks with wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools suffers harm." So it's really true. Now, in a golf sense, we can suffer harm by just negative attitudes. So you get to a tournament, and the greens may be a little slow. Maybe the greens aren't as slick or beautiful as they were the week before on tour. And I hate slow greens. I hate that. And I remember Gary Player I remember the story where Gary Player got to a tournament and the greens were incredibly slow. I love slow greens. I make putts every week on slow greens. And the next week the greens were incredibly fast, and the same guy was out to dinner with Gary Player. And Gary, I only putt well, perfect on fast greens. And Gary was just going to be positive about anything and everything, and it was probably pretty good to hang out with a Gary Player.
Yeah, I was not very good at that, like especially now that I'm playing some senior golf. In this one particular course we've been playing every year, my attitude has been so bad and negative going in, but then I expect to play well, and it didn't quite happen.
And we're even going to talk about expectations here in another episode of our little Proverbs thing here. But I'm going to ask you now spiritually, are you aware, like for a young woman out on tour, I would say hang around Tracy Hansen. Are you aware that the environment, the companions that you have, are you aware that that's going to have a profound impact on you? I'll never forget a guy that I met, did a lot of prison ministry. He said every guy he ever met in prison, virtually every guy he ever met, it's his story. He said, well, let me hear your story. It almost started this every time, well, I met a guy.
Yeah.
And can you say the same thing? You positive and negative, have you suffered harm with bad companions, and then you've derived great benefit from finding the right people to be around?
Absolutely. I mean, you kind of become like the people you hang with, right?
It's amazing how that works.
It is. And so if I've had people in my life that have been very negative prone, and then I notice how much more negative talk comes out of my own mouth, and then vice versa. When I'm around positive people, I'm almost like, you're too positive.
Right.
But eventually, I can start taking on some of those.
You take it in. You take it in.
Yeah.
You know, and Tracy, that's really the purpose for Links Fellowship. So you can come to maybe your own golf community or whatever, your own club, and then you can get in there with like-minded people, and you can both have an impact and be impacted by, again, companions who are wise. This book has it all. This book has it all. So I'm looking forward to our next episode where we'll get into a little bit more about the Proverbs and what it has to say.